can you tap into that about what the difference of like having a kid experience play versus an adult, and like what that connection can be?
Yeah. So it's really interesting because I can't remember who said it. I have no idea. I can't credit to anybody.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold said that you don't grow old because you stop playing. You grow old because you stop playing, not the other way around. Yeah.
That's ad-libbed, and I love that.
That was so bad. Arnold, if you ever listen to this, I'm so sorry. I butchered your accent.
You should hear my Yoda. It's even worse. Remember when you were a kid and all you had to do to make new friends was to smile, laugh, and play games with each other? Today I'm sitting down with Geoff McLachlan, a TEDx speaker and founder of Professionals at Play, who rediscovered how the simple art of play can foster genuine conversations with our children, colleagues, and peers. His work demonstrates how engaging with play can break down the most difficult barriers and spark meaningful interactions in professional and personal settings of all kinds. Get ready for an inspiring conversation with fellow keynote speaker, Geoff McLachlan, where we explore how play and simple laughter can create new opportunities for connection and growth on this episode of Navigating No. Geoff, thank you so much for being here. Seriously, we met about a year and a half ago, and we both were applying for the TEDx Spokane.
Yeah.
Right? And when we walked in, this is an interesting story because we talk about navigating no, right? And when, I don't know about you, but I had no idea what to expect for our finals, on the final picks. I was just told that you show up and you're like, okay, just have an idea what your speak is going to be about. You don't have your speech prepared.
Yeah.
And when I showed up, there were only the 5 or 10 finalists left.
Yep.
And the girl that got up in front of us, she got up and she basically told my entire story that I was going to speak on. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? What do I talk about? Do I talk about myself? Like, what is my story? How do I ever beat her?
Right.
And that was an immediate rejection. I was like, this lady is going to get this. She snags it. And she did.
Yeah.
She did. But you were also one of the, you also got selected.
Yeah.
And so can you talk to us about what that experience was for TEDx and maybe what that felt like?
Well, it was, first of all, I was in the same boat as you. I was given the email that said, hey, just show up and be ready to talk about your big idea, which I had applied months before and could not actually remember what my big idea was.
6 months.
Yeah, something like that. And I was like, oh, cool, I got an audition. This is great. What's the audition? They're just show up, be ready to talk about yourself, introduce yourself, and then do a quick little here's my big idea. I had no clue. And like you said, here come these people and they are totally prepared. And I went, I did not get the same email as they did.
Either day, right.
I'm host, so I literally wrote down 3 bullet points. And then I got up there and did what I did, which was play, because that's what I was going to talk about. How do you use play to build a community, to create connection? And I ended up getting it, and which was great. And then the part that I kind of was like, I fought a little bit, was they asked if I could do the exact same thing with 500 people in that auditorium. And
versus at the selection process, I think there were 20 at 5
there were
of
20,
us, maybe.
Maybe 20, 25 of us, and we had plenty of space, right?
Sure.
So we got to actually move around. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And then the big ask for them was, can you do that in 5 minutes?
Because most TEDs are usually between 15 and 18 minutes or something like that.
And I was like, at first I was upset because I was like, no, I want my full time.
Yeah.
I want as much time as everybody else. I've worked, I have this all built. And then I had a couple friends tell me hey, can you do it in 5 minutes? Like a perspective shift of, can you take what you're supposed to do and can you do it that fast? Can you show the world what it's all about in 5 minutes? So
what did you take from that? What inspired you to move on from that point?
For me, it was that total perspective shift of the challenge of it went from, no, I want my time, to yes, and I'm going to show the world that I can do this so quickly, and it doesn't have to be challenging. It doesn't have to be hard. You can do it in a matter of moments, and it creates connection. And it's funny because, here we are 18 months later. My dad can still tell me the name of his partner.
In front of you, because
in front of me,
you had the front row turned to the back, and the back row turned to the back, and you had the entire auditorium work with each other.
Exactly.
And to this date, I don't know any other TED speaker who has spoken for that amount of time and has hit what you hit. So I think that's congratulations on that. That's absolutely magnificent. Well, I bet. What was your biggest takeaway from that experience?
I think the biggest takeaway was be ready to roll. Be ready to shift and roll with the punches. Because you never know. I mean, there could have been any number of things. Like one of the issues that we had with the actual speech itself was because people were so engaged in interacting with each other, it was actually hard to get their attention back to give them the next set of directions.
Sure.
Because you tell them to talk, and all of a sudden they're like, blah, 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 which was great. It was wonderful. That's exactly what they were supposed to do. But then I was like, okay, you only have 10 seconds. And 10 seconds for them was like 32 seconds.
Sure.
I'm like, bring it on back. And the sound system wasn't actually big enough for them to hear the next set of directions. So in the final edited version, it's down to about just a little over, I think it's like 6 minutes and 15 seconds or something like that. But the actual day of, it was about an 8-minute keynote, but 3.5 minutes of that keynote was literally me just trying to get their attention, waving my hands like, all right, everybody, focus up here for a second. We got to go on. One more thing. Just come on. Everybody in the back. Let's go.
Right. Well, and I mean, you speak professionally like I do.
Yeah.
And it's like when you hand over to the audience the ability to like interact and to gain that back, it is difficult, let alone with 500 people with a sound system that's off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So here's the thing. If I wouldn't have had a sound system, I would have completely had to change my keynote on the fly.
Really?
Yeah. Because if the sound system didn't work, if all of a sudden sorry, the microphones are broken and we don't know what's happening, but we're going to continue to record because your little lapel mic is going to catch everything.
Sure.
That would have completely changed everything. And then I would have had to go to storytelling about play, and which is very, very different. And I don't know if it would have translated as well as the actual playing of with people going, oh my gosh, I'm going to pull somebody's finger. Didn't think that was going to happen today, but here you are living the dream.
I thought you did a fantastic job. Like I loved it. And you had changed it from the selection process when we were going through finals as well. And it was just like to be able to see it two different ways was great within the small audience and then the large audience.
Yeah.
Was getting a TED speech on your bucket list? Like, can you talk to me about that? Like, what did you feel?
It wasn't.
Okay.
I was already a professional speaker. And so I was like, I'm already doing this craft. I do this for my job, for my career. This is what I do. And I'm like, I don't need a TEDx talk. I don't need to. And I had a friend who's like, Geoff, it's not about you. It's about the message. It's about the people that it affects. And this is just one way to get your message to more people. And I went, oh, again, perspective shift. Because I've always been like, oh, the people I work with is who the message is for. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I want to work with more people. So how do I get that message out there?
Well, and I think like the whole reason that I think both of us speak, especially after knowing you, is that it's like we want to make a difference in this world,
Absolutely.
Right? And so the bigger the platform that you have the ability to share that message and give to the audience is better. And I think that when you're able to do that and you change your perspective, because the same thing, I had already been speaking and I was moving back to the Spokane area and I was like, well, I might as well do it. A buddy of mine wanted me to do it. And it was just one more platform that you could hit with that.
Yep.
And so now that you've done that, what has the feedback been from that? Do people come up to you and they say, hey, I saw you on TEDx, or hey, I heard that, or they pull my finger, like what do they do?
So I haven't had such a great reaction. I had a lot of people.
Nobody likes pulling fingers.
Nobody likes pulling. Well, okay, everybody likes pulling fingers, especially if you're dads. You're like, pull it. Come on, child, let's do it. But no, it was interesting because I had a lot of people afterwards reach out on social media. And so I had a number of people who actually ended up being able to work with because they saw that and went, oh my gosh, we recognize we need that in our organization. We need some people to actually like, how do we talk to each other? How do we do things? How do we make work more fun? Because, I mean, if you're going to do something for 40, 50, 60 hours a week, you should at least like the people you work with. You should enjoy it. And if you can help people find their passion in that, in the job that they're doing with the people that they're working with, productivity goes up, engagement, mental health issues start to become less of an issue. You have a better workforce. You have a more profitable place of employment. I mean, that's a win for everybody. Because if all of a sudden those people go, I feel valued here, like that's a difference. That's human connection. That's community. And if you build a community that works together, they play together, they work together, all of a sudden it's a massive win for everybody.
Well, and I think that it's like, we're both parents. And so it's like understanding what it's like to have kids and to be able to interact and connect with them is different. But you know that and I think you would agree that it's like, just because you're a kid doesn't mean that an adult doesn't feel the same way or gain the same emotions or the same pleasures or the same appreciation. It's like, can you tap into that about what the difference of like having a kid experience play versus an adult, and like what that connection can be?
Yeah. So it's really interesting because I can't remember who said it. I have no idea. I can't credit to anybody.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold said that you don't grow old because you stop playing. You grow old because you stop playing, not the other way around. Yeah.
That's I love that.
That was so bad. Arnold, if you ever listen to this, I'm so sorry. I butchered your accent.
You should hear my Yoda. It's even worse.
We should do Star Wars later. That's for sure. The big difference is that kids have more creativity and openness. Right? They are open to play and play experiences with anybody, because as long as they're playing, it's fun, it's engaging, that's part of the community. Play builds community that way. As adults, we have different stressors, right? We've got to provide, you've got to pay taxes, you got to find a place to live, put food on the table,
responsibilities.
The responsibilities of life, those are the things that kind of like drag you down. And if you think about it, the play becomes more challenging because we think we have less time to do it. Mm-hmm. And in reality, what we're doing is a lot of people are numbing themselves with television or drugs and alcohol or whatever, any number of reasons to not have to deal with reality, versus saying, wait a minute, what if I lean in? What if I lean into the reality of, hey, this is hard. How do you replenish your soul? Well, I found that most people, when they play, they become truly engaged in the process and with the people around them. And what we really, really as human beings need is community. We need to have a tribe. And which is why like martial arts, CrossFit, the Star Wars community is so huge, because there are people that this is something we love. And if you love it and I love it, we automatically have something in common and we can 100%. Geek out about things. And that's a community, right? We just have to one thing in common and the ability to share information about it. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, you like this and you like this and you like this. And like, it builds. It's how friendship builds.
And would you say that play just breaks those barriers down so it's easier for me to find those things that you love or like that we can communicate on? Is that something you would suggest?
Absolutely, because the play opens up. So when I do an event or something with an organization, play is always a part of it, no matter what. I mean, I've done some really boring stuff like talking about ethics. Let's do a 3-hour training on ethics with insurance salespeople, right? And I said, okay, we can do that as long as you allow me to play with the organization, with the group. They're like, how's that going to fit into ethics? And I said, ethics, play. Do you play fair? Do you play by the rules? Are you making sure that everybody wins? I mean, it led, so we did an hour's worth of play and then 2 hours worth of great conversation because they played. And it turns out some of them had like never met other people in the room before, even though they've been in the same group for, a decade.
4 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, how do you not know these people? You meet monthly. We're like, well, I see them over there. They always sit at that table. I always sit at this one.
It's like a school dance where everybody's off on the edges and you're not. I have my blinders on. No one sees me.
If I look down, no one will notice that I'm not dancing.
I'll always remember I graduated Ferris, and we're sitting up with the last name Stiley. I'm like one of the last ones. And I turn behind me and I see somebody and I go, hey, what's your name? He's like, Fred or something. And I go, have you been here all 4 years? He goes, yeah. And I go, have I never met you? Like, there's only like 400 of us. Like, how have I never met you?
Yeah.
Have you always been this way? I know you were a teacher. And what made you move from being a teacher to get into speaking and making a bigger difference? What was that transition?
I was getting in trouble in the world of education because I was playing too much.
Yeah. So you stood out.
I stood out. I didn't follow the rules. I was like, rules seemed more like suggestions. And they're like, no, that's called a curriculum. And I was like, yeah, but it's kind of boring and really not very effective. And I don't think the kids are learning it. So I just made it more fun. So we did a lot of stuff outside.
Oh, awesome.
And I would go outside and we'd play Follow the Leader. We'd do physical activities. We'd sing songs. We'd explore. We'd discover. And eventually one of the principals, whom I loved, who was incredibly supportive most of the time, said, hey, Geoff, other teachers are getting jealous of the amount of time you're spending outdoors. And I was like, I'm a kindergarten teacher. We're not meant to be indoors.
Sure.
And so I was getting a little bit of pushback.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting moved up to middle school from elementary school. So I started off my career, in high school education and taught special education as a paraprofessional. and then moved into elementary education after I got my degree and taught multiple grade levels and subjects. And then I went to middle school and taught woodshop and PE, which are some of the most fun things you can do in middle school with students. It was awesome, but it was so interesting because I worked on the north side of Spokane, which is kind of gangster, you know.
Sure.
we had some issues.
I grew up on the mean streets of the South Hill. I understand.
Mean Street, yeah. You know all about the north side, south side. What?
Yeah.
And I was an East Valley guy, so east and west. I mean, we had it all covered. But no, I worked out there, and it was so interesting because some of those kids that were the biggest quote unquote trouble kids in school, I'd get them in the wood shop, and I wouldn't have any problems with them.
Mm-hmm.
They were golden. Mm-hmm. And I said, this is where they're actually learning real life skills. They're learning how to communicate with each other. They're learning how to measure and do math. And I said, they're learning how to plan and execute. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, okay, here's the thing. They don't get in trouble in this classroom because if you get in trouble in here, you don't go to the office, you go to the hospital because you're missing a digit.
Sure.
They don't mess around because it's serious, grievous bodily harm. And I was like, but they also get to do things. They're working with their hands. I said, if you can dream up something and draw me a plan and give me measurements on it, and we can find the materials, you can build it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so they had creativity. And I mean, I had a kid build this like 3 foot by 2 foot skate park for tech decks. That was unbelievable. It was so freaking cool. And he did it all out of scrap wood.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's just, you see the creativity from the kids. And it's like,
absolutely.
I taught martial arts to kids forever, and then with Olympic athletes. And it's just like, to see their creativity blossom is amazing. I actually saw a kid lose a digit in my junior high shop class. So I know that there are repercussions for not doing things.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It sounds to me like you've hit, like you've heard some rejections in your life, and so you've had to navigate your no. If I was to ask you what your hardest no is, what would that be?
So I've been a professional speaker for almost 20. Well, okay. So I've been speaking for 20 years, and then I would say professionally for 13. And I say 13 because it took me 7 years to get to the point where I could say, hey, I'm a professional speaker.
Absolutely.
My income is like, I don't have secondary jobs. My income is speaking. And so, but I made a really, really awesome decision on February 19th of 2020 to leave my business partner at the time and to strike out on my own.
This is right before COVID.
Literally 3 days before the world shut down.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
was just putting the timeline together. Okay.
For those of you that don't know,
experience.
There was this whole thing called COVID, and apparently it shut the world down. And everything that I did at that point had to be in person in large groups.
Oh.
Literally everything. Because I was like, I can't do a Zoom meeting where everybody's in a different room and create connection if they can't actually like shake somebody's hand.
Physically touch.
You miss out on oxytocin and serotonin and all these different chemicals that go into human relationships that you cannot do if you're not physically together.
Sure.
And so that was the biggest no I got, was literally the world saying, you can't do what you do anymore.
So what did you do with that? Like, what did you take? What did you do with that information, and how did you move that to become stronger and become the speaker that you are today?
Well, I had to shift, and I had to shift hard. And I kind of dove into coaching because I saw groups that were struggling with mental health and with like team building and like, how do we, like, the brilliant part, I don't want to say the brilliant part, that's the wrong words. I think the good that came out of COVID was that we truly discovered how much we need each other. That all of a sudden people went, we need community. We need connection. And right now, my business is increasing because people are realizing that post-COVID, even though they have like, hybrid work situations, we're seeing like in the student world, the mental health like issues go through the roof. And
I don't even think we know where we're at yet. It's just like guys coming back from war. You don't understand what the fallback on that is. We don't know yet.
But that's the things that I'm seeing with like this young workforce that's coming in. They don't know how to have conversations with each other. They don't know how to interact. And if somebody disagrees with you, they're like, oh my gosh, they hate me. They want me to die. This is terrible. Like they immediately catastrophize to the absolute worst possible point. When it's like, no, I just don't agree with you. Doesn't mean I don't like you. It just means we disagree. And that's okay. So like getting young people to realize, like, first of all, like the anxiety about meeting somebody else or just having to shake somebody's hand or have a face-to-face conversation where that is so anxiety, like such a high anxiety thing that they just won't do it.
Paralyzes them.
Absolutely paralyzing, which guess what? Unfortunately, no matter what you do in the world, you're probably going to have to interact with humans at some point. And not just on a screen, you're going to have to do it face to face. And so giving them the skill set to do that and doing it through play, it totally breaks down the barriers. Yeah. It just breaks down the barriers where they can, if they start to laugh, they're like, okay, cool, I got them. This is easy. Yep, everything else is cake now.
I love that. And COVID, for so many different people, it was a blessing in disguise. I mean, it's like, I talk to my wife about this all the time. It's like, we will never have that amount of time with our daughter and our son again. Like, I mean, we were home with them, and you talk about homeschooling in the sense, like, it's like, we'll never have that time again.
Nope.
And so being able to change your perspective and see it differently it was a huge thing.
Yeah.
What is, if that was your hardest no, and you took that and now you're applying it here, I would also mention that as far as feedback, a lot of people don't know this, but within the speaking community, it's like everybody thinks like, oh, if I'm a speaker, then I can't tell other people about my gigs, or I can't tell people about who I work for because I want to hold on to that and grasp that. But it's like our community is actually help each other, right? And it's like, because we can refer each other, and it's like, if a company books me, they're probably not going to use me again next year. So they're going to ask me like, hey, do you know somebody who's done this or whatever? And it's like, I can refer people. And when I mentioned like, what was the feedback based on TEDx or like your communication on that? And it's like, I hear constantly, being back in the Spokane area, your name comes up all the time. And people are like, oh, we love Geoff, we love this, and he did this and that. So you've done some amazing things, and I think that you are making a difference in this world because all the feedback I'm hearing based off of you as a professional is like unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I love that. If you were sitting next to yourself, so you get on an airplane or a train, okay, and you sit down and you happen to be by your past self, and you were to tell your past self one thing based off of what we talked about today or anything else about navigating those challenges in life, what would that one thing be that you would tell yourself?
I think that the biggest thing that I would tell myself back then is to surround yourself with people who are better than you. The only way to get better is to be around people who are better. Like in martial arts, like I'm a martial arts guy as well. And if I only roll with white belts, I don't get better. I just get really good at tapping white belts who are spazzy. But if I roll against purple belts, brown belts, and black belts, I get my butt handed to me and I learn. I learn, oh, wait. And I can ask them, wait, how did you do that? What was the difference? So surround yourself with people who are better than you and who drive you to be better yourself. Because if you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, you really have to be aware of who those people are and the influence that they have on you. And I'm a big, big fan of that concept. And so I am constantly reevaluating who I spend time with, who I give time to, because I want to be in a room where I'm not the smartest person. And I want to be in a room where I can help bring up the next generation. Because I want to be in both of those rooms.
Absolutely.
Because we are, like, I love that I get to refer other speakers because I don't go to every school or every business every single year back to back to back to back to back. It's a cycle. And if I can say, wait a minute, I've got these people that are incredible speakers and I think that you could really use their message.
Yeah.
That's just a solid referral. And that just helps out our community of speakers. So yeah, that'd be the biggest thing is like surround yourself with people who are going to drive you to be your absolute best and who probably know more and do more than you do.
I love that because that's a theme that a lot of people, our guests, have actually said. And that's what I learned as a kid is that my martial arts instructor brought me into our dojo, which was a community, and I was surrounded by people who were way better than me, faster than me, way older. And every one of them, as long as I was willing to ask for help, completely poured all of their knowledge into me. And that was like one of the greatest things that I learned is about if you're open to asking, then they will pour all that information. And it's just this, because every one of us has stories, experience, and knowledge. And it's like, you're never going to know everything. And so be open to learning that. And I think that if you're not learning from your connections or your connections aren't learning from you, I think it's time for you to reevaluate your connections, right? And so if that's only those 5 people, open that up. And I think that what you had mentioned is that a lot of the kids, especially today, I think through COVID, if you were in junior high and you had to go into high school, or you missed your junior and senior year of high school, how hard of a transition that would be. And it's like, for them to be able to speak to people and interact with people is a huge thing, because you have to be willing to ask. Otherwise, people are going to think you're fine.
Yeah.
They're not going to help you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to be willing to ask. And I think one of those barriers of entry to doing that is to be able to connect. And I think you're hitting on the fact that playing and making it fun really opens that layer of that onion up.
Yeah. It really does. Well, it's peeling the onion layers back.
100%.
It's, to get an onion, you literally have to peel off the skin, right? You got to get the skin off of there, and then you have the onion.
I cut the edges off first.
Me too.
Okay,
Absolutely.
just check.
Just did it last night. I was like, had burgers out at Liberty Lake with my grandparents, my mom and dad. It was awesome. Like they're like, you cut the onions, you can cry. I'm like, I am impervious to onion cutting because I do this all the time.
I still tear up, man. I'm telling you.
Depends. Some of them are really, really like powerful.
I wonder why that is, because sometimes you're cutting, you're like, wow, I'm really,
Right.
did I just touch my eye? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or jalapenos. Same thing. Some I'm like usually don't use gloves or anything, and I'm like, I got one the other day. Oh my gosh. It hurt me. It burnt my fingers. I was like, this is a jalapeno. It's not supposed to be that hot.
I didn't have cuts.
I didn't exactly.
Well, you are making a difference, and I am so proud to know you. How do other people learn more about you or get in touch with you and find out more about what you're doing now?
Gotcha. Well, let me see here. The socials. This is the hardest part because I'm really not super active on the socials.
I think we're at that age group where it's like we kind of missed that boat. We were playing Oregon Trail and Number Munchers on computer.
On the actual floppy disk. not the hard floppy.
Right.
The
floppy, right?
There's an entire generation who has never died from dysentery, and it shows.
Yes, basically. We all spent our time hunting on the Oregon Trail game.
Right.
Sure.
So social media, let me see here. I'm on LinkedIn. That's Geoff Professionals at Play. I think you can just look up Professionals at Play.
Sure.
Or Geoff, I'm Geoff. Sorry, I'm a Geoff. That explains a lot. I'd say that to people, and they're like, oh, it makes sense. Got it now. And then last name McLachlan, like Sarah McLachlan, the singer. Same thing. And then I'm on Instagram at Professionals at Play. And then I have my website, professionalsatplay.com. So those are pretty much the easiest ways to get a hold of me. And you can always check out the TEDx and leave me a comment. I check those like once every 6 months or so. So... super active on there.
You are socially active. I love it. Well, seriously, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your message, and thank you for continuing to share your message based on that. And I just wish you the best luck, man.
Thanks, man.
You.
Blue, it's awesome as always. Thank you so much, bud.
And you got to keep up with the Star Wars, man.
Always.
Because we do have that connection.
We have a big Star Wars connection, which actually, okay, I know.
Not even TEDx. We're talking Star Wars. Way before that.
So last week, I know this is weird. I sent you a text, that little video, because I geeked out. I was with a friend, an acquaintance, some guy I met that saw the TEDx somehow on LinkedIn from California, reached out to me and said, I think you'd be great for our organization. Well, it turns out they weren't quite ready for me yet. And I just like, we hit it off though. And I said, I'm going to be in town on this date.
Yeah.
I said, can we get together and have a coffee or dinner? And he's like, okay. And so we did all the things. We ended up meeting, and I'm in Sausalito, somewhere in Marin County.
Marin
County. And I show up, and we have this great dinner. We sit there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Next thing I know, he sees his best friend. They come across, meet all these people. I'm from North Idaho. And one of these gals, they're like, he goes, this is my friend Geoff. He's from North Idaho. One girl goes, where are you from? I was like, Coeur d'Alene. She's like, I grew up in Spirit Lake. And I was like, what?
Yeah, it's
small
awesome.
world.
Yeah.
But then he goes, this is where George Lucas has his office. And I was like, what? And he goes, are you a Star Wars fan? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
He goes, okay, we got to walk down to the park. So we walked down to the park, and George Lucas has built this beautiful little park. It's tiny. It's a tiny little park, but it has a fountain. And you've got, on one side, you have Indiana Jones, big bronze statue of Indiana Jones. And on the other side, you have Yoda.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was so cool. And then I'm walking around, and I sent you that little video, and the guy who was standing there, he's like, do you want me to here's some better pictures because it's getting low light. I was like, thank you. And turns out he's like, I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm like, no way, really? We start geeking out. And he shows me on my phone, I've got the Empire's,
the Imperial emblem.
Imperial
Yeah,
emblem.
I commented on that. Right.
And he pulls up his shirt, and he's got a tattoo of the Imperial emblem on his shoulder. And he's like, did we just become best friends? I'm like, I'm pretty sure we did.
Oh, that is so great.
The world of Star Wars.
But it took you making an effort.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what a lot of people miss out on is that they're afraid to reach out, or they're afraid to actually put a little intent behind that. And so but that makes our world a better place. Meeting people, and some of my best connections over this world through travel of our 40 plus years, it's like the ability to connect with people. And that's really, really important.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wishing you the best luck, man. I love it. And
Thank
keep
you,
it
Blue.
up, mister.
I appreciate you, man. Love you, brother.
Thank you.
Have a great time.
You too.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Navigating No. I hope you found today's conversation just as inspiring and insightful as I did. Since this is a brand new podcast, we'd love your help to make it even better. So, if you enjoyed this episode, we would love to hear your feedback. And if you think someone else could benefit from hearing it, please share it and help us spread optimism and positivity. We release a new interview every Monday, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.